All right, welcome everyone into another Cancel the Cabal on peoplesinternetradio.com. I'm Stephen Roberts, and I have Del on again tonight. We're going to discuss conduct. What do you think about that topic there, Del?
I think it's an absolutely excellent topic. It pervades society, top to bottom, left to right, inside and out. Conduct is the manner in which a person behaves, especially in any particular situation or place. So if you think about it, it's what we do all the time.
It is. It brings up the idea of how someone was raised, how their morals come to light.
It's supposed to. I mean, we should be taught conduct at a very young age. We should be taught how to conduct ourselves. Isn't that what society should be teaching us? Isn't that what our parents should be teaching us? Because without conduct, what are we?
Yes, absolutely. I was told many years ago that parents don't raise children; they actually raise adults from a very, very early age. You're raising an adult.
Well, that's the plan, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And you got to love them enough to let them go. You got to raise them to be independent.
Yep.
So, I mean, conduct is so pervasive. You could never get a job without probably signing up to some sort of conduct. You certainly can't join the military. You can't join anything really without, or any club or society without encountering its ethics or its conduct or its rules or its guidance.
No, I without doing a lot of research, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that you can't do without rules and conduct and that.
Well, it's both a noun and a verb. Okay, so it's the manner in which a person behaves, especially in a particular place or situation, but it's also a verb. So, for example, conduct is to organize and carry out some sort of an action. So, for example, in the second trial, he conducted his own case, his own defense. That's the verb in action, you know?
Yes.
And we do that all the time. I mean, if one is cycling, one is conducting oneself in a certain manner. I mean, are you cycling on the pavement? Are you cycling on the roadway, the highway? What speed are you cycling at? Everything you do really relates back to conduct and interpersonal relationships. How you consider other people, how they consider you. It's all an exchange of conduct.
Well, certainly. Yeah, that's a very interesting way to think about it. I hadn't even thought of it being a noun and a verb.
Well, it's interesting that it's both a noun and a verb. You know, it really does have significance in, or it's both a thing and an action. You know, or a description and an action.
Yes.
So it's what we do all the time. Obviously, we are things and we perform actions. So how we perform them is a measure of our conduct.
Yes, it is. Yeah. That's. I guess we can expand on both being a noun and a verb.
Not to mention in physics, then it's how things are transmitted via conduction.
It is.
So it's an interrelationship in physics.
Yes.
You know, it also has the application that, you know, a conductor or to conduct is also to conduct a choir or an orchestra or a musical organization. And, you know, also how you behave in a certain way.
Yes,
in a specific way.
Yes.
So, for example, you might behave yourself with utmost propriety, or you might get yourself into a whole heap of difficulty. So it has 5 or 6 different meanings.
It does.
Or descriptions.
Mm-hmm. It does. Water conducts electricity. Copper conducts electricity. Steel, aluminum, most any type of metal. Yeah, and to conduct yourself with high moral fiber is what a lot of people try to do.
But how are we taught that? When do we consider it? You know, I mean, do we ever actually consider it? Most people don't, I don't think.
No. Otherwise, if they did, a lot of people wouldn't be in the trouble that they're in if they would think of consequences. I was told at a early age that you better think of what you're doing, otherwise there's a consequence.
It derives from the Latin. The actual word conduct derives from the Latin conducere, which is brought together, or which means brought together, and also the French conduit, which is to channel, or a channel rather, you know,
yes.
A conduit. So it's also interesting that its usage over time is now 1/3 what it was in the 1800s.
1/3?
Yeah. So we've lost discussion of conduct by 2/3 since the early 1800s.
What do you think has been lost?
Our use of the word. You know, we're not as aware of it as we used to be. In the 1800s, there was a hell of a lot of talk on, you know, between people about conduct. Mm-hmm. Grandparents were talking to their grandchildren. People in professions were talking to each other about conduct all the time. Okay. You know, much more so than they are nowadays.
Well, certainly.
I mean, how often do you hear the word conduct mentioned nowadays in any discussion?
Well, I wonder if that's a societal issue there. I wonder if society has become so politically correct that you can't discuss that type of a thing with someone, otherwise you'll hurt their feelings, or they will become somehow changed.
But you see, nowadays we're getting so caught up in our own lives and our, you know, what we're actually doing. We don't look at our actual actions. You see, so it's almost a challenge now if you said to somebody, well, hey, you know, how did you conduct yourself there?
Yeah.
You know, did you consider your own conduct in that situation?
Yeah. A lot of times somebody will just say, you know, piss off, mind your own business.
But there again, you know, I mean, if a friend says to you, I suppose it comes back to, look, do you want to be the friend? Let's say you go out tonight and you have a few bevies, okay, with your buddies, okay, and for some reason you have an argument. You end up in hospital because 3 or 4 guys give you a hammering. Well, would you prefer a friend that would visit you in hospital the next day and basically come with a warm face cloth and say, hey, you know, poor Stephen, rub your back effectively and say, oh, you know, poor you? Or would you prefer a friend standing beside you and you in your hospital bed saying, well, hey, you know, your conduct was unbecoming. You brought this upon yourself. Why did you mention to that guy that he had such extraordinarily large ears, you know, or whatever? Why did you press that button?
Yeah.
And can you not see that because you were there, you were after having a few bevies, you weren't functioning correctly, you didn't show respect, and you could have diffused the situation several times, but no, you got your back up and you put your fists up, and here you are now in hospital, bruised and battered.
Yes.
But I mean, would you be a friend, or would I be a friend to you if I said, if I was rubbing your brow and rubbing your back and saying, hey, poor you, you know, look at what they've done to you.
Yeah.
Because it isn't what they've done to you, it's what you've done to yourself.
Yes.
And if I'm being a friend to you, I want to see you not end up in that situation again, not end up in that hospital bed, because if you don't consider what you've done, you're going to be there in a month's time again, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, it's more than worth considering, because that's exactly what we do to ourselves all the time by not examining our conduct. When we start tuning our ears to our conduct, you'll find that our phone calls are better. Our interaction with other people is better. It's crystal clear. There's no, you know, it's unequivocal.
It is.
And we're actually conveying more, and we're being more in our conversations than just wandering around aimlessly and head in the clouds type of thing, and talking about politics and whinging and moaning.
Yeah.
You know, so we might encourage each other more to actually get on with things by having a look at our conduct. So if somebody's, if I have a friend that's sick, hey, are they getting enough vitamins and minerals? You know, what is it that they're doing to themselves? Should I not point it out if I can see it? You know, maybe I've been through a similar situation myself in the past. Surely I should share it. I shouldn't be afraid to.
Oh, yes.
You know, if I see somebody, if I see a man shouting at a woman on the pavement when I walk out of a store, right, and I can see that she's feeling it, I might just say, hey, might just distract the situation, diffuse it.
Yeah.
You know, it's very easy to say, hey, is that your wallet on the ground? You know, distract the guy. Or, hey, the police are on the way, man. I might assist that,
Uh-huh.
Or whatever. Just help diffuse the situation. One doesn't have to throw oneself in there and get oneself into a huge amount of difficulty. One doesn't have to get into a confrontational scenario, but surely we have to try and influence each other positively, but passively.
Oh, yes. Yes. And then,
you know what I mean? Or one could follow him home and, take the gun out of the boot and apply it to his head, But those are the choices that we make all the time. It's conduct. Everything is conduct. How we conduct ourselves in every situation reflects on us and should teach us how to improve going forward. Because let's say you need something, okay? Let's say that the power is off for some reason. You have no money. They've switched off your power. And you need a generator, okay? Well, what do? Do you sit at home in the dark, or do you call to a friend that you know has a generator and say, look, don't have the price of the generator at the moment, but can I borrow yours? And I will pay you back via something else,
Yes, right.
I have a cement mixer there, and I know you're going to go building, and you can borrow my cement mixer or whatever, You got to address each problem as it occurs, or if you don't, you're sitting there in the dark, effectively.
But you also have to take the initiative and also wonder if your neighbor is even going to talk to you. Wonder if neighbors talk to each other anymore.
But if you call it, you see, but that's part of it too, That's what we're feeling at the moment is that society is breaking down.
Yes.
Because of the influence of government and the influence of media and the memes that it's putting out, which are creating fear in us.
Yes.
Government is all around us, and media is all around us, and people, yes, are full of cognitive dissonance, and they're all worried about being politically correct and fearful of each other and all the rest of it. But if we buy into that, sure, there'll be no society left, will there?
Well, yeah, but you and I know that government doesn't even exist. It's just people running around doing criminal activities that call themselves...
It exists in the minds of the people that are fearful of it and worried about it.
Yeah.
Just on conduct again, every professional body has codes of conduct. Every barrister, every solicitor, every judge are supposed to operate within defined disciplines. Every sports club and every personal conduct every personal contract has conduct interwoven in it. And everything we do is contracting. So, if you call to your neighbor, how you get out of the car tells him, whether you're smiling, whether you're friendly, or whether you've got a scowl on your face, evokes different types of responses in him.
It does.
Yeah. Who would refuse you if you've got a genuine need and you're approaching in a passive manner?
Indeed, yeah.
And if it does, then that would tell you more about them than it would about you if your conduct is good.
Yes, it would. Yes.
So if what was it you said that they say, go to hell or get out of here?
Uh-huh.
Well, hey, no problem. If ever you need anything, call around to me. I'm only over there.
Yeah.
And that gives them twice the headache then that they've got to think about.
Yeah, it gives them It gives them the idea that maybe you're not as bad as they thought you were.
Well, it causes them to look introspectively at their own conduct, doesn't it? Like if we raise the profile, let's say that 5 friends are sitting around the table, right? And we've got 2 of them whinging and moaning about whatever, okay? And we've got another couple sitting back and they're listening, and they're just listening respectfully and all the rest of it. They may or may not agree. And then we've a guy that just goes crazy. And he starts banging the table and he says, no, that's all wrong. It has to be my way and only my way.
Yeah.
Well, if you're observing that table or listening to that conversation, can't you see exactly how they're all conducting themselves?
Yes, you can.
From a distance. But why can't that guy that's standing on the table now shouting at the others? I mean, why can't he see his conduct? What has he missed? Was he missing that day in school, or how did it escape him?
He probably got his conduct from his father, or his grandfather, or his role model, whether it happened to be a man or a woman. Who knows?
But you see, where's his self-determination then?
He's probably too worried about his money and his wife and children to worry about his conduct.
But his conduct has consequences. All of our conduct, all the time, has consequences. It has to.
He's probably too worried about his conduct and not knowing the fact that his conduct is going to affect his life adversely.
Well, if he works in the civil service or in most gainful employment, won't it pop up in his performance reviews?
Possibly.
Probably.
Well,
because the other operators in his team, his colleagues, the people that are working with him, will certainly be putting a note in their sheets that his conduct wasn't very good.
Yeah, but if he's a police officer or the in Garda Síochána, maybe they all conduct themselves that way.
But then it comes back to conduct unbecoming.
Yeah.
That relates back. That's an old doctrine in law that one is supposed to act as an officer and a gentleman.
Yes.
If one is an officer, I mean, they're police officers.
Yeah. I was listening to a pod. I listened to a lot of pods, but I caught one with Vin, and I think he had Bryzer on. I think it was the show that Sherry Fisher was on. They were talking about Bryzer's case, his official offer case, and he had all of the proof that could nail the banks to the wall, because they were accepting his offer for 4 years, I believe, up to that point. And then just all of a sudden the judge said she was going to rule against him because she didn't want to. She was just going to. She slammed the gavel on the table and said, I'm fighting for the banks. And
she would have moved it a few times probably beforehand,
Yeah, but Vin also said that the judge looked at Bryzer and she was very, very uncomfortable, and Bryzer knew that she wasn't going to be able to sleep very well that night. And, she was more or less kicking the can down the bucket, ruling against him, so he would have to appeal, and somebody else would have to would have to make the judgment.
Well, I'm not that familiar. I wasn't there on the day or whatever. But doesn't that open it up to him? Or we'll say, if I was in that situation, I'd be sitting in front of her the next day when she's not had a great night's sleep and saying, okay, I'll have an extension of time there to appeal, and I'll have your written determination in that,
Well, I don't think it was actually up to her after that point. It was up to him to make the appeal. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, isn't that what the whole system of justice is about? I mean, anything can go wrong on a day. I mean, if you take a car journey there, you can have a breakdown, you can have a crash, but it shouldn't stop you completing your journey if that's your intent.
A good possibility of it, yes.
Yeah, but or you could find that the weather conditions are inclement, or all sorts of things. There are all sorts of variables presenting themselves to us every single day. But it doesn't mean that we don't get to where we want to go. We
Yeah,
might be an
yeah,
hour late, or we might be a day late. But if you want to get to point B, you'll get a lift, or you'll get the bus or the train, or you'll get to your destination sooner or later if that's your intent.
yes, yes. Well, a lot of people say that the choices that you make leading up to whatever happens to you is what is supposed to have happened because of those choices.
This is how we learn.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
And we learn more and more about ourselves every day.
you're supposed to, anyways.
Like the justice system is a constant, I mean, there's going to be there might be a different judge there the next day or whatever, but I tend to go back and nail the same one if I could,
Well, yeah,
with the truth. If I'm standing in truth and honor, then how dishonorable is it to go back in there and say, look, maybe there was a mistake made, maybe you want to tidy this one up,
Yeah, yeah,
and especially if there's your home or your way of life or something that's being challenged. Because if you don't, then what are you doing? You're just going with the flow. You're not, and I'm not talking about any specific case. I'm just saying in general that
you're giving up and giving in.
You just got to keep on your own path, like really and truly, And I mean, you can deviate with consideration, but you probably want to. If your intent is good and you intend on getting to point B, you'll probably get there.
Yeah, yeah.
While there's air in your lungs.
Certainly. Do you think, with your demeanor, if you were over here in America and you were confronted with some of the situations that some Americans are faced with whenever they're pulled over by a police officer or confronted by some sort of a political official, how do you think you would fare?
Well, I think you guys are strapping guns, yeah?
Yes, they are.
So, maybe they'd be more inclined to use them in that, given that they might have them, right? So, obviously,
the psychotic ones do.
Yeah, well, one's conduct in that situation is probably more critical than it is over here. Because it could be a life and death situation. I mean, who wants to get shot for a busted taillight?
Yeah, yeah.
So, in that sort of situation, I might be delighted to see them. I might raise because you see, if they're getting out of the car with their gun, with their hand on their gun, looking for a reason to draw it, I might give them the opposite of that. Which is, hey, I'm glad you're here. It's fabulous you're here. I'm delighted to see you.
Uh-huh.
And they say, well, hey, why'd you go through that red light? And I'd say, well, because I've got this very legitimate reason for it.
Yeah.
And if he then wants to go on and write a ticket and that type of thing, well, that's his remit. But I certainly wouldn't go giving him any negatives, or looking for that sort of abrasion to occur in that relationship, because it mightn't end too good for me,
You don't think an RTS would be in order, do you?
Well, that might come later in that type of thing, but that would be where I'd be safe in my own dwelling, and offers would come through the post box. Yeah,
sure.
That would be later on, but at the minute and at the moment, I'd make sure that my hands were clearly visible. I'd have my hands out the window,
Yes. Yep.
Or certainly in plain sight, if I chose to engage with him, But at all times, I'd have my hands on the steering wheel, and I might even ask him, "Have you got one of those handcuffy things?" And hand it in the window there, because I'd like to I'd like to put it on my hands and handcuff it to the steering wheel here in my own vehicle, so that you feel absolutely safe, because I see you're carrying one of those guns.
Uh-huh.
Where I come from, the police don't need those, but given you got one, I don't want to see you using it today.
They're smart over there. They don't need guns because they're smart.
Yeah, well, it's if that's his fear, and if he's dangerous with that fear, you probably, because I'm not a small guy. I'm quite a big, tall guy, So if a small fella jumps out of a car and he's toting guns and and things like that,
There's
um,
plenty of them over here too.
yeah, well, but I'm just saying, if he's got that sort of a jumped up attitude that he's going to shoot first and ask questions later, um, again, I mean, meet him with a smile,
Yeah,
not a grin, a smile, you know.
yeah,
Doesn't it help diffuse most situations? If he then wants to shoot you, then he's got a problem.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I mightn't drive around in that scenario without a camera running and things, a traffic cam running and things like that.
Oh yes.
Certainly, if I was pulled over and that type of thing, I'd want to be recording it. I might phone a friend and make sure that they're recording it on their side or something like that, so that there's a record of it, because it's an interaction. It's a little court case on the side of the road, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is.
Or you could take the approach of confusing him. If he's just a gun-toting guy and he's not used to these guys actually respect authority also, So why not give him a question? Is it an intercept, or an interrogation, or an interview you want to conduct? How's he going to answer that one,
Yeah.
That's going to make him stop and think, take his hand off the gun and say, hey, I have a live one here, You could do all sorts of things, but whatever you do will probably vary in each situation.
Certainly. Did I pass you a video last week that I seen?
You did, yeah. Yeah.
The one with the young
Sheriff?
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. The police officer was, he was all cordial, and he wasn't really hyped up or anything. But when the young man started getting, I don't want to say abusive, but he started to get cheeky.
He got stroppy, yeah?
Yeah, he got a little cheeky. It was quite interesting that he put his hand on his baton and he pulled it out about 4 inches and then put it back in. And then he was playing around with it the entire rest of the video.
Yeah, that was quite telling, because the man, you see, the young fellow was quite aggressive.
And I dare to say that he didn't even pick up on that until after he seen the video, I would imagine. And then, after he looks at the video for the first time, because, I don't know, maybe he didn't even see it when he was doing it live, but when he played it back, he probably said, whoa, look at that. He picked up his baton and he started playing with it. And I didn't even notice.
But that's what they're trained to do. They're trained to be ready and meet aggression with aggression, or,
Certainly.
more aggression.
Yeah.
So that's why I wouldn't be overly drawn to that type of an approach.
Well, they're also trained to take control of situations, too. They're trained to immediately diffuse by any means any sort of situation. And they're also brainwashed.
Well, they are, I mean, they're recruited and they're trained in a certain manner. The what would you call it? The scores sheet that they actually assessed them by was generated here in Ireland by a professor of psychology, and that's being used now in all the police recruitment drives over there,
Yeah.
and starting to come in now in the UK and actually back over here as well. They want a guy that's easily fairly malleable.
Yes.
So that they can form, a guy that ain't going to ask too many questions. So you don't want him too intelligent.
No.
You want him intelligent enough that he can hit a target and that type of thing, and that he can,
file his papers correctly.
Yeah, fill out the paperwork and all that type of thing, and he ain't going to get you into too much trouble, but that he is going to take orders.
Yep.
So that's their primary goal, is that, each guy is going to slot into where they want to put him. And it's only the cuter guys that will climb the ranks quicker in that,
Yeah.
The guys that really do follow orders and that they know they can trust to perform in a certain manner.
The psychotic ones? Is that what you mean?
While supposedly serving the public, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, I mean, all the TDs and senators and all that type of thing, Chocty Dáil as we have here, they're the politicians. They all sign a code of conduct when
TD, what
when they enter the Parliament building.
what does TD mean?
TD is Chocty Dáil. It's Irish for member of the House.
Member of Parliament? Okay.
Member of Parliament, yeah, like a senator, or that type of thing. Yeah,
I see. Okay.
they're the publicly elected representatives.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. Well, they're supposed to operate under Article 1510 of the Constitution over here and maintain but primarily, their code of conduct says that they must maintain the jurisdiction of the Dáil, which is the House of Parliament,
Exactly.
and its standing orders.
Yeah.
So they're primarily sworn, if you like, to uphold to protect the House first against the people,
Exactly.
and then to conduct themselves in a manner that befits him, So
Yeah.
as soon as they join that club, they take oaths and they join a new club or a new level of club. Effectively, it's not really what we think we're electing them for,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're serving, but they're, now that they've got their, somebody puts an arm around them and says, hey, if you're good, we'll show you a few carrots, And that's then how they suddenly now they're being wined and dined, and like on your side, all these senators, they have all these, what do they call them? Taking them for meals all the time and on holidays and trying to get them to vote in certain ways. What are they called?
I had the name right on the tip of my tongue, but I don't remember now.
Influencers, we'll call them, yeah?
Sure.
Yeah, that corporations pay a lot of money to, so the tobacco industry would make sure that they're not going to ban tobacco.
Yes, yes.
McDonald's would make sure that the licensing isn't too severe on the fast food outlet side of things,
Yes.
Maybe it's or they might influence, that all the smaller stores find it very expensive to comply and that type of thing.
Yes.
So that maybe they get more of a market share in that. It can be used in different ways.
Yes.
All of those things. But again, that's all conduct. They learn their conduct in that situation and not to rock the boat too much, Because if they want to get on, like literally in those circles and not to be frowned upon, they'll have to perform in a certain manner. And then quite quickly then they tend to become yes men,
Yes.
Or get bought off by one means or another.
Yeah.
Like in the military there, for conduct unbecoming, you'd get court-martialed, wouldn't you?
More than likely, yes.
U.S. military Article 133 would be thrown at you, wouldn't it?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. That's the one, I believe, for unseemly conduct or conduct unbecoming.
Yeah. An
officer and a gentleman again, So if you're told to go and point your gun in a certain direction and squeeze the trigger and you don't, you're going to be in trouble. If you decide to head in the opposite direction and not do what you're told, you're going to get in trouble. Likewise, if you shoot an officer or something like that, you're going to get discharged or jailed, because you've signed up to the terms and conditions.
Yes,
so that's again, how they control each other and that type of thing is get them to contract, to sign the contract. And they just say, hey, well, you signed the contract, If we have a court martial and we discharge you and we decide that you didn't follow orders, or that you did the wrong thing in a certain situation, or that which you weren't supposed to do, or you brought the military service into disgrace, or anything at all like that, we're going to fire your backside out of here, And that's what they tend to do. So that's how they control each other in those scenarios. Likewise, an officer, police officer, and all that type of thing. Now it seems that unless he, shoots 5 people at one time and it's all videoed, he'll by and large get away with it. He might get put on a desk job for a while, and
unless it's Barack Obama.
Yeah, well, well, that's that's a different story. I mean, we can invade another country, and that's patriotism, isn't it?
Lobbyists. I think that was the word you were searching for, isn't it?
Yeah, lobbyists. Yeah. We don't really have them over here. It's more discreet.
Is it? Yeah.
You don't have to register as a lobbyist and all that type of thing. I think over there, if you register as a lobbyist, you're registered for life and all that, aren't you?
I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, according to people we've spoken to in the past, anyway, and that type of thing, there's an awful lot of that going on, seemingly behind the scenes. The media is largely controlled and driven along those lines.
Well, certainly it is. Yeah.
You have conduct ceremonies then in like the Boy Scouts, haven't you? They have courts of honor merit badge that they get for marching in certain styles and things like that, then, don't they?
I'm sorry, who's this?
The Boy Scouts. You have ceremonies built around conduct.
Oh, yes.
And again, all these ceremonies are to if you have military ceremonies and things like that, they're all dressed to the nines, absolutely perfectly presented and marching in perfect unison, and they're all legioned, so they're marching in perfect squares, and they're all responding to their commands instantly, and they're well practiced in drills and all of that, So there's no real thought or individuality there. It's a uniform, again, a formed entity quite quickly, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And again, that's all to make them do what they're told when they're told to do it,
Yeah.
And present it in a lovely, positive light. I mean, there are all braids and medals and, white hats and whatever else, or white cuffs, and it all looks absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
It covers up that they're fighting in trenches abroad, or flying drones and bombing families,
Yes.
when they invade and that type of thing, Now, I know, obviously, there are always some bad guys on the other side, but if you press their buttons, they're going to respond largely.
Yes, right.
Have you ever come across The Conduct of Life?
I don't think so.
A series of essays written by Ralph Emerson in the 1860s or 70s.
Yeah. No, I haven't.
Yeah. Very interesting series of essays on that. But again, that relates back to the 1800s, when conduct seemed to be much larger in people's life. They were much more conscious of it than we apparently are nowadays.
Huh. Okay.
You see, we're filled up with cognitive dissonance. It's all, soap opera shows and, false, makey-uppy sort of programs, well-rehearsed, and using actors and highlighting certain angles and, creating tension and creating memes all the time.
Uh-huh.
And that's distracting us by and large then from our own personal conduct, my conduct and your conduct. If we're watching television all the time and getting brain drained by that, then surely we don't have time to actually discourse on these topics.
A lot of times people don't. Or they don't want to take the time anyways.
Yeah. And I mean, the Romans long ago used to build huge amphitheaters and entertain their people and create that empire sort of an approach. If it was throwing the Christians to the lions or chariot racing or whatever. We have soccer and baseball and the NFL over there, isn't it?
Yes.
So you have huge amphitheaters filled up with people, and we also have Sky Sports now and all that type of thing, beaming it into our own homes. So now we're all talk about who won the last football match.
Yes.
Whether Boston beat Massachusetts or whatever,
Yeah.
Or the New York Lions versus the Cub Bears from Indianapolis.
Chicago.
Whatever, Whatever, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not familiar with the teams
yes.
over there, but I mean, I'd imagine that Americans are almost completely consumed with all of that type of thing.
Most of them are. And that's part of the reason why we're having so much trouble.
I remember years ago watching The Sopranos on TV. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do.
And, how they used to make a lot of money out of all the gambling that went on at that time, but the country practically switched off and shut down when during that game season,
Yep.
the finals or whatever of the NFL. But they used to enjoy it. They used to make a lot of money out of it, seemingly. And with illegal gambling and that, is your gambling quite taxed over there or something, that they're able to secure that market?
Oh yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. So if you place a bet, you pay a 5% tax or something like that, isn't it?
Not so much place a bet, but if you win. If you win over, I think it's $1,200, you start getting taxed.
At what sort of rate?
I couldn't really tell you. I don't gamble.
But is it taxed as like personal income tax or something like that, is it?
Yes.
All right, so you pay quite considerably so.
Yes.
So a lot of that traditionally has been quite underground.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, again, there's a market for everything and everybody for a market,
Yeah.
or enough people for every market. But that's the variety, the spice of life again,
I was told as a young boy that as far as gambling and stuff like that, I was always told the old mantra, a fool and his money will soon part.
Absolutely. I mean, when you see all these bookie shops, betting establishments, shops we'll call them, open all over the place, and increasingly they seem to be opening more and more and more.
They're casinos over here, yes.
Yeah, huge chains of them, right? I mean, surely people are missing the point that these places never open their doors, but that they make money.
That's right. The house always wins.
The house always wins. So every time you gamble in a casino or whatever, they're taking 2 or 3%, we'll say, of the money that you gamble. So if you gamble $100 100 times, you're left with nothing.
Yep.
And I mean, they create the environment, the sounds, the light, the music, the free drinks, whatever they need to do. They created a comfortable, plush environment.
That's right.
You got to dress up going into those places, don't you?
The pretty girls, not necessarily.
Pretty girls, yeah. Well, and they'll bring you as much alcohol as you wish.
Yep.
I imagine, is it free of charge?
Or the pretty men. It used to be, I would say up until 20 years ago, the casinos over in Vegas would nearly give away their food and drinks just because so many people were gambling.
To get the people in.
Yeah. But they just don't, I don't know who was the first one, but somebody finally figured out not to give the food away and give the drinks away, but start charging something, and then others started doing it. And so now it's pretty much just about like going into a restaurant. You have to pay a full price for a meal and a drink. So you're not getting anything for free. You're getting charged for the food and drink, and they're taking your money.
Unless you're a high roller where they'll send a plane for you, yeah?
Yeah.
Or a helicopter.
Right.
Yeah. Well, because they know they're going to make a lot more out of you than the price of the helicopter or the plane or whatever. But again, exactly. that's feeding into people's unhappiness, really, that if they're gambling, I mean, why are they gambling?
Yeah.
Are they not happy with their lot? Are they do they feel that they're okay, that they're financially secure, or are they suffering from all the memes and the fear and the increasing pressure that media is filling their heads with?
Yeah, maybe they gambled one time and they won and they got this thrill, so now they're trying to recreate this thrill over and over and over again, but they're not able to. I don't really know.
And they get hooked on that adrenaline rush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a drug. We're all born with so many happy endorphins, we'll say, in our brains.
Yes.
And if we, let's say, people that have consumed drugs for a period and things like that, if they get off the drugs, we'll say, they've lost the sparkle in their eye. They've consumed those quicker.
Yes.
Than they might otherwise. I've always noticed that anyway, that by and large you can spot somebody that has been on drugs quite easily, because they don't have that sparkle in their eye. They don't have that
Yeah.
sharp intellect because they've sort of burned it up. They've consumed it quite quickly, So what you normally have if we call it a release of endorphins over your life, if you have a litre of endorphins, they've burned that off in a year, man.
Yeah. Or a month.
Or a month, yeah. And they've had great highs maybe, but it leaves them with a lot of lows afterwards, trying to cope with without that input, To my mind, anyway, that's the way it appears to me. I could be wrong, of course.
Well, I've never really understood drugs. I drink alcohol every now and then. I don't do it to any sort of extreme. I did in the past when I was younger, but not so much anymore. But drugs, I've never really understood. They just mess people's lives up. They just screw everything right up.
Yeah, they mess with families and they help break up communities.
Yeah.
And also, and you've got a whole industry around them then. It just creates fear in that because, apparently they cost quite a bit of money and they create a sort of an uncaring, unsocial attitude in those that participate in them.
Plus, also, finding out from the last few years of researching, they cause another whole industry of funding the police state and putting money in big bankers' pockets and politicians' pockets.
Mm-hmm. And again, you see, it creates the whole fear thing. I mean, wasn't there a top policeman on your side of the water there retired because his whole department was wasting a lot of time and energy arresting people for marijuana charges?
I guess I hadn't heard that.
He completely left it behind him in some big city. It could have been New York or something like that there a few years ago.
Huh.
And he said, "I'm done with this. I'm taking early retirement, or I'm walking out the door because he said when we break into a house where they're smoking a lot of marijuana, they say, hey, have a seat and sit down.
Yeah,
that it's the crackheads we should be focusing on, and that this marijuana is classed as a Class A drug or whatever, and that we're supposed to be out wasting our time and materials and resources arresting young fellas with a little bit of tobacco and marijuana on them, that we should be focusing on greater evils,
Yeah.
So he apparently, I can't remember his name or whatever, but he wrote an interesting, I remember seeing an interesting article anyway by him that 1/3 of his resources were wasted on that type of silly stop and arrest, seize a little bag of grass type of thing, when police should be policing more. They should be stopping crimes at another level, rather than young fellas messing around with those type of things, with sort of herbal stuff, really,
Yeah.
But again, that's I don't know. Maybe it's a gateway drug. I don't know.
Well, they claim it is, but it's. I think marijuana being a gateway drug, it has been for some. Most certainly. Is it for all? That's up for debate. It depends on what type of a mentality someone has on whether it's a gateway drug. Psychotics, I don't really know much about them, but just because someone kicks a dog, that doesn't mean that they're going to be a serial killer. But a lot of serial killers have started out abusing animals.
Absolutely, yeah. But you see, again, if let's say a teenage child, let's say your youngest brother or your son or whatever, is going around kicking dogs, that's probably because he's quite frustrated, or he's just he's missing that link,
Yeah.
Would he like to be kicked himself?
Yep.
To create pain in another animal or another human. It's probably a step away from kicking a child.
Certainly. Yeah.
If he starts on dogs or whatever. If we allow that type of thing, surely we should concentrate on those kids that are falling through the cracks and
Yes.
experimenting with not getting a good education or not buying into society or having that realization that they shouldn't be harming other animals or other kids or other humans.
Yes.
So again, that comes back to not teaching kids private personal determinations or how to make
Not teaching them conduct.
critical decisions in terms of their conduct.
Yeah.
You see, everything is interrelated and everything is connected. But we'll say Emerson there. I mentioned him there earlier, and those essays, The Conduct of Life, right, which were all around in the 1800s, and this was a huge discussion point for a lot of the 1800s. When people were trying to awaken other people and create societies, and it was pre the industrial boom, and you had social structures and classes, and people were trying to make life easier in hard times where they didn't have central heating and they didn't have internet and all sorts of things. Everything was more difficult, but yet they took more time to discuss conduct.
They did.
They did discuss it more, but Emerson approached it from the point of view that we are incompetent to solve the times. So the times we live in, look, we're wasting our time really worrying about the overall scheme of things, that we should look at it from the inside out, which is my personal conduct. How do I relate to other people?
Okay.
He said that since we cannot crack the riddle of the theory of age, Emerson would have us spend our energy more profitably by deciding how best to lead the lives we have. So from the outset of his essays, he insists we allow no sentimental or no glib view of our lives, for Providence has a wild, rough, incalculable road to its end, and it is of no use to try to whitewash its huge, mixed instrumentalities, or to dress things up as they are not, So rather than look, at society as a whole, we must look at society as a collection of individuals and improve their individual lot by awakening in them self-determination. And that's how they, that was the basis for all of that discussion at that time. And I don't hear much of that anymore. I don't hear politicians talking about self-determination or governing oneself. It's more talk about bigger and bigger government and false promises. I'm going to create a whole new department there to take care of all society's ills.
Well, how can they track down the boogeyman if they're worrying about their own conduct?
Because if each of us are more aware of our own conduct and aware of the conduct of the people around us, then society, by and large, will control itself.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm self-governing, right? So if I harm you, I must apologize and make good. If everybody around me does that, then, or if I encourage everybody around me to do that, then I just raise the whole profile of my community.
Yes, you do.
As do each of us. So we can choose to be fearful, choose to spend all our discussion time and to waste our consciousness on talking about football or what occurred last night in terms of the program on TV, and it's all programmed. Or we can switch off the TV and basically get out there and start interacting with people.
Yes, we can.
In our community, and get more involved and volunteer for a little bit more here and there, and less about me and more about us in that sense.
Yes, we can.
But that it's rooted in me and my outlook.
Yes, absolutely.
As it should be in yours.
Yes.
I mean, really and truly, you shouldn't be going around kicking a dog.
No, you shouldn't. But I think we're just about at the hour here, Del. It'd be a good time for a break.
Yeah, let's hit a bit of music.
All right. We'll be right back, everyone. Just a few minutes.